if you want to have a great team, you got to have great players. And Oregon has developed a reputation for being great in talent acquisition of many kinds. High school recruiting, we talk about it every single week on the show. How fun is it to talk about Oregon recruiting every single week? Because, bringing in top 5 class after top 5 class back to back, top 5 classes for the Oregon Ducks in the high school ranks, and they've certainly established that in terms of that realm. But I think going even further back than those back-to-back high school classes is what Dan was able to do when he was hired in late 2021, and of course that first season in 2022 is, I think, the transfer portal and their approach to the transfer portal has contributed to, it's been a big building block, and it's contributed to them making steps up on the college football ladder. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The transfer portal is a very unique tool right now in college football. It can be used in many different ways. Different coaches use it in many different ways. I know now, like 2024 going into 2025, it's changed a lot, even when Dan first came in 2022. And I think like coaches, it's when they come in and they kind of know that, hey, the clock is ticking. You're working on a short timeline. I think a lot of coaches now, and like I said, now might be different than a few years ago, but the nature is to be like 35 transfers out and 28 or 30 transfers in. I think that's kind of, hey, we got to retool this program. We got to try to find as many guys that try to fit the traits of what we want to be able to do. When Dan came in, he had a grand total of 10 transfers in that very first class in 2022. The maximum amount of transfers he's taken so far was that 2023 transfer class where he took 15. Before I really go any further, and before I talk about Dan and the continued approach and how well that they've done in the transfer portal, my inspiration for this idea really came from a recent press conference from one of the top tier transfers in the 2025 transfer class, that being Dylan Thieneman.
Oregon's really good at taking in transfers and developing them and transitioning them to the next level. I mean, this defense, it kind of sets you up for that level because of we play all types of coverages. We do all types of things that you'll see at the next level.
So when you have a player of that caliber saying Oregon is known for being a destination for transfers, they are known for taking in players that have spent a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years at another school, and they're here, but I want to get to here. I want to get to the NFL. I want to be a second-round pick. I want to be a first-round pick. Dylan Thieneman recognizes, and he chose Oregon, and it's been widely reported, that Dylan Thieneman, or Oregon, did not offer Dylan Thieneman the highest money offer. So their reputation, Dan's reputation, the staff's reputation with taking transfers and really elevating them to that next level. Let's talk about Oregon's approach and their strategy, because I think it's their strategy is what I really like the most right now. Strategy point number 1, don't over-recruit the portal. I just laid it out. 2022, 10 transfers. 2023, 15 transfers. 2024, 12 transfers. Right now in 2025, they're sitting at 10. Less is more. Quality over quantity, I think, is a big thing. And then ace your evaluation. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to evaluate like a group of 5 player. He put up this type of production, he put up this type of numbers, but it was against this type of competition. You have a guy like Dylan Thieneman is a great example. The defense was 131st in college football last year, but you have to try to isolate him on its own and to say, hey, we run this type of system. What does this film tell us? How talented is he, and how can he be plugged into this system? I think Oregon has done a tremendous job evaluating high school players, and I think they have done a tremendous job evaluating transfer portal players as well. When Oregon goes shopping in the transfer portal, they find guys that are most of the time they're finding guys that are making an immediate impact, that are filling a hole that needs to be filled in the starting lineup, above the line plus players. You go down the list when Oregon is looking for a transfer player, and you look at when the portal's closed, you look at all the players that Oregon has brought in. 70 to 80% of them are being plugged into the starting lineup immediately when fall camp gets underway. That goes back to quality over quantity. You see some other programs out there that are taking bigger numbers. Oregon will not be a program that will take bigger numbers because I think even from the start, Dan realized that hey, if we want to be a national championship caliber team, and that's been the goal ever since day one, is to turn the 0 into a 1. Okay? Ever since day one, I think he's realized if we overload our roster with transfers, that takes away an opportunity for us to recruit a player with a higher ceiling that's going to get us to that level to be able to win a national championship. Transfers have a role. And even if Oregon recruits the number 1 class in the country for the next 5 to 6 years, Oregon is still going to have a need for some transfers because, hey, even if you load up on all of this high quality talent, it's a nature of the system that some kids are going to transfer out because they just don't get the opportunity. That's the current world of college football that we live in. And it's a nature that when some of those guys transfer out or some of these moving parts line up the way they do, you're going to need to go out there and get an experienced player to plug into that hole, certainly as well. One thing that's worth noting, I think that's been impressive throughout Dan's tenure as head coach when it comes to transfer portal is they're very selective. I talked about that before, but they're very selective of who they target. They're very selective of who they bring on campus. Now, I could be very wrong on this, but to my knowledge, the only player that they've brought in for a transfer visit to come to Eugene and have not been able to seal the deal on is Walter Nolan. That was last year's portal class, and he eventually went over to Ole Miss. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody else out there. I'm sure there is. But the point I'm trying to make is when transfers get onto campus in Eugene, and I don't even think Dan really makes his pitch, but they see what the environment is about. They talk to the staff. They talked to some of the current players. Bear Alexander talked about how he talked to Derek Harmon and Jamari Caldwell, and they told him, hey, this is going to be hard, but they're going to get the most out of you. They're going to get you to be able to reach your ceiling and maybe beyond that and get you to the league. Because that's what it's all about, I think, for these players, certainly at the college level. And I think Oregon provides a platform that just some people like these transfers are certainly looking for. Now being in the Big Ten Conference and having the success that they do, like you look at a guy like Mekhi Hughes that's transferring in. Okay, he's certainly on an NFL path with those back-to-back 1,300, 14-yard rushing seasons. But a lot of times, and like even you could even say Dylan Thieneman at Purdue, like even at a Big Ten school, like getting in it on a team that's just you're playing with better players and you're having better coaching, you're just going to be better, especially like when you're in practice. When you have good on good, going into that environment it's going to make you a better player. You're going to progress faster. You're going to improve to get you to your eventual goal, which of course is to be as highly drafted, I think, as you can possibly, and win a few games, certainly along the road as well. But that's got to be, I think, one of the big selling points for Oregon, especially with the track record of what we've seen, is that guys can come from wherever they've been playing. They're going to be playing on a bigger platform at Oregon, on a proven winning team, and they're going to be able to elevate themselves and get to the NFL. Like Bo Nix is a perfect example of this. I've got a handful written here, and I'll kind of list them off. But Bo Nix, like, look how he was struggling at Auburn. They kind of threw him into the fire right away down south. He had a lot of pressure because his dad played there and all of that. He transfers out to Oregon, and he's a completely different quarterback. Heisman finalist, and what was he drafted? 15th overall. Had a great rookie season with the Denver Broncos. Tez Johnson is a guy that was playing kind of like Mekhi Hughes. He was playing at the Group of 5 level, a lower level of college football, and I think he had a lot of talent at that level and put up some pretty good numbers, but he needed a bigger platform, I think, and he needed to play with better players. Hey, Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel throwing the football to you certainly doesn't hurt. And that's what Oregon provided him. And I think that he could have a good career, certainly in the NFL, as a slot receiver, maybe a return specialist as well. Bucky Irving. Like, Bucky's an interesting example because he was playing behind Muhammad Ibrahim at Minnesota, who ended up being the leading rusher in Golden Gopher history. Right, they had a stable of running backs when he played there prior to Bucky Irving transferring in 2022. I can think he had something like 770 rushing yards at Minnesota. Like, he was already certainly developing over there, but he needed that opportunity to be a number one back somewhere. And a lot of times it's just opportunity. And Oregon provides that high level of opportunity and winning and being on the big stage that some of these guys certainly crave. The proof is in the pudding, I think, when it comes to transfers. And now the 25 guys, because I think you take all of this information and it's very clear what Oregon has been able to establish as far as the transfer portal approach. But there's some guys in the 2025 class where there could be some questions around. Like, Bear Alexander is a big one. Okay. When I heard that Bear was coming onto campus at Oregon, my first thought was maybe like, I don't know. I mean, we feel pretty good on the defensive line, maybe a little bit of a head scratcher. But then when you dive into it a little bit, this is an opportunity for Bear. We've talked about low risk, high reward when it comes to him as well. But them signing him, them taking him in, I think once that was really announced, that kind of like, I had confidence in this staff based on what they've done in the past in the transfer portal. And I've got a lot more confidence that Bear Alexander is going to work out in a big way at Oregon this season and in the future, certainly if he plays that second year of eligibility that he has available to him. Isaiah World is another guy that a lot of people say he's got a lot of raw talent. But what have we said about the offensive line? Back-to-back Joe Moore Award winners. There is great coaching on the offensive line here at Oregon. So you got a guy that has all the tools, that's got that NFL frame at offensive tackle. You plug him into this system. I think you have to have the confidence that a guy like an Isaiah World, even an Alex Harkey, those guys from the group of five level are going to work out as transfers at Oregon because it's been proven before. I'm extremely excited about what these 2025 transfers can do in Eugene, this system. And it's all due to the blueprint that has been laid and the strategy that has been put forth by this coaching staff and the overall staff surrounding this Oregon football program.